Hi, my name is James. On behalf of all co-authors, I'm presenting our paper in this video. GIMIS, Gaze Input with Motor Imagery Selection. We developed a hybrid gaze and brain-computer interface, or BCI, to accomplish target selection in a Fitts law experiment. Gaze is used to steer the computer cursor for target pointing. Motor Imagery BCI is used to execute a click for target selection. After a short introduction, we will describe our method, GIMIS. We will present the Fitts law experiment that was performed to evaluate its performance. We present the results and conclude with a reflection on the user experience and the feasibility of GIMIS for human-computer interaction. Professor Stephen Hawking suffered locked-in syndrome from an adult-onset motor neuron disease, ALS. It causes patients to gradually lose the ability to move, speak, swallow, and breathe. Global patient population is on the rise and expected to increase to over 300,000 by 2040. However, one does not have to be silenced by this horrible disease. Hawking produced some of his greatest work while confined to his wheelchair, thanks to augmented and adaptive communication technologies. Eye tracking and brain-computer interface technologies have emerged as feasible ways for locked-in syndrome patients to communicate. Fitts law experiments are commonly used to study human-computer interfaces, including eye tracking and other muscle selection inputs. It is, however, less common in BCI studies. A BCI system allows the user to control external devices using brain activity. Firstly, the user's brain signal is recorded, digitized, and processed by signal processing techniques, and features are extracted. Afterwards, machine learning is used to translate the features into control commands for an application, which can provide feedback to the user. Commonly, non-invasive BCI uses EEG to measure the brain signals. Motor imagery, or MI, is a paradigm of BCI that uses visual-motor imagination to visualize the execution of motor tasks. It generates classifiable brain signals in an intentional act and does not require any external stimulus. The example shows a user steering a computer mouse by imagining left or right-hand movement. Hybrid of eye tracking and BCI systems have been designed. A hypothesis is that a hybrid system can mitigate the Midas touch problem associated with 12-based system. Examples include using 12-based gaze and MI-BCI to confirm each other before selection in a search and select task. The application of Fitts law experiment for the evaluation of gaze-MI hybrid is rare. It's even rarer for more than one MI selection methods. Different types of BCI clicks can be mapped to different actions, such as single click, double click, right click, click and drag, and so on. Therefore, in our proposed method, GIMIS, gaze input with motor imagery selection, our experiment focused on implementing and evaluating a gaze-MI hybrid for pointing a target using gaze and selecting the target using MI. We investigated three selection methods: MI of the left hand, legs, and either left hand or legs. It will help answer the following questions. What throughput should we expect? What are the error rates? How mentally demanding is the interaction? And can BCI support different types of clicks when used with eye tracking? We had 15 participants who completed the Fitts law experiment. 3 were female. They were between 22 to 34 years old with a mean of 25 years. 3 of them were left-handed. 4 wore vision correction lenses. 6 had participated in previous studies collecting brain data, and 6 had participated in previous studies collecting eye tracking data. Here is one participant sitting before the apparatus setup. The eye tracker we used was developed by the Eye Tribe. Every participant had greater than 3 stars calibration accuracy. The eye tracker recorded the coordinate of the gaze and also the pupil size. Pupil size is an indication of cognitive load and has been found to increase with increased mental demand. EEG data were collected using the GTAG USB amplifier and 12 silver chloride electrode channels. Conductive gel was used to reduce the impedance to lower than 4 kiloohms for all the participants. There were two parts of the experiment. First, there was a session where the EEG data from the BCI were acquired, processed, and used to train the classifier. The second part was to undertake the target selection task using the trained system with the Fitzlaw experiment software GoFits. In the first session, during EEG data acquisition, this sequence of cues is shown to the participants. From left to right, the initial white cross indicates that attention is needed. It appears for 1 second. Then a picture of either the left hand or lower legs appears for 4 seconds, during which the participant imagines the corresponding motor image. This is followed by a black screen that prompts the user to stop imagining and become idle. After 6 to 7 seconds, the cross appears again, and the next trial starts. In the second session, we used the GoFits software to conduct our Fitzlaw experiment. Here is an example screenshot of it. The yellow circle is the target. We can see it in Figure A. The participant steers the cursor to the target using gaze. Once the cursor enters the target, visual feedback is given by turning the target green that we can see in Figure B. The colors are designed so that the interface has constant and equal relative luminance values throughout the experiment. When the colors are similar in brightness, pupil size will not be affected when the participants look at the target or when it changes color as a feedback. Each new trial has a new target on the opposite side, and then the target advances clockwise by 1 position. We set a 4 times spatial hysteresis. This means the target remains green even if the gaze point moves outside the target circle, but is within 4 times the target width. A click outside the circle was registered as an error. Audio feedback was given to the participants with different sounds signaling an error or correct selection. The experiment used a 3x2x2 within subjects design. The independent variables were selection methods, target amplitudes, and target width. The dependent variables were target acquisition time, throughput, error rate, and pupil size. The target acquisition time has 2 components. Movement time is spent by gaze on pointing. Selection time is spent by the BCI on executing the click. Selection time is the main component. The figure shows the offline evaluation accuracy of the BCI system. The 3-class classification, the left column, had the lowest accuracy, 60.8%. The binary classification of MI versus rest, the middle column, and the left hand versus legs, right column, were similar in accuracy, around 74%. Here we have the target acquisition time for the 3 selection methods, left hand, legs, and either. The green lines are the means, the red lines are the medians. Error bars show 1 standard error of the mean. The grand mean was 4,260 milliseconds. The selection method either had the lowest target acquisition time, 2,650 milliseconds. The selection time for the selection methods. The grand mean was 3,200 milliseconds. The selection method either had the lowest selection time, 2,050 milliseconds. Here we have the interaction effect of selection method by target amplitude on throughput. The grand mean was 0.4 bits per second. The selection method either had the highest throughput, 0.6 bits per second. For the either method, the BCI classification is reduced to a simpler binary classification between rest and motor imagery. Whether it's left hand or legs is not considered. Participants liked the either method. They commented that it was less frustrating and they were able to change strategy when stuck. This is possibly why it had the highest throughput. However, using the either method means we would lose the possibility to have different actions mapped to left hand or legs motor imagery, for example, a single click or double click. Throughput was significantly higher at the larger target amplitude. The interaction effect was also significant. The polar plot shows the error rate for targets at different locations on the screen. Error rate of the larger target width is shown in red, The smaller target width is shown in blue. The grand mean was 11.8%. Larger target width had the lower error rate, 4.4%. The BCI may produce false positive clicks if a selection happens inside the target before the user begins to imagine the movement. A larger target increases the probability of such false positive selections being inside the correct target. Also, as some participants commented, it's difficult to keep the eyes fixated while imagining the movements. A larger target therefore gave more buffer for eye movements during imagination too. And if the eye tracker was shaky, a larger target helps by providing a larger activation area. Here's the participant's left-hand block pupil data. On the left, we have the raw data and the threshold for accepting data points as the two black horizontal lines. On the right, we have the baseline corrected pupil data for a block. Areas shaded in green are active task sequences. The participant rests between the sequences. Generally, the pupil size appears smaller during the rests between the active task sequences. The grand mean of the baseline was 20 pixels. We find that the smaller the target width, the smaller the pupil size. It's not what we might have expected from the demand caused by motor task complexity and movement planning. Since we used approximately equiluminant targets and background to avoid the pupillary light reflex, this may suggest that the increased demand for precision caused by the smaller target width is the stronger effect, in line with the findings reported by Fletcher et al. Here we plotted for the three selection methods the mean value of the pupil diameter on the y-axis by trial number within each sequence on the x-axis. The pupil size varies with time. We observed a startup effect from the first to the second task of approximately 5%, comparable to the findings reported by Bekgaard et al. For the selection method either, shown in green, pupil size stabilized hereafter. But for the selection method's legs and left hand, we can see a decrease in pupil size after the second selection. However, we only had 5 targets per sequence, which may be too few to see any convincing trend, compared to 21 targets per sequence reported by Bekgaard et al. Participants rated their experience of mental and physical demand for each selection method. X-axis is the selection method, y-axis is the demand. The scale is 1 to 10, 1 being not at all and 10 being extremely. There were no significant difference in neither mental nor physical demand between the methods. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely, participants rated that left-hand selection required significantly the greatest effort. Participants rated that there were no significant difference in frustration nor preference between the selection methods. Participants commented, "It was difficult to completely concentrate my thoughts. Also thinking about avoiding movement at the same time was difficult. Every time I failed, it got increasingly difficult to click, so I had to try to clear my mind all the time before I could click again." Some participants' bodies cramped up slightly when they were trying to activate a click. Their breathing became heavier, and they even started fidgeting due to not being able to succeed. This made it more challenging in turn, since their mental state was different from training. The effects of breathing, tensing of muscle, and eye movements were absent in training data. They were calm and almost meditating during EEG recording. When they were told, "Don't try harder, but try more similar to the training imagination," they were able to activate selections better. In conclusion, our experiment has shown that the GIMIS method to be feasible. The best performance was obtained when participants were free to choose if they would use either the left hand or legs for motor imagery selection. However, throughputs were lower and error rates were higher than values reported in most other Fitts law studies. Therefore, we suggest that GIMIS should primarily be considered as a way to introduce BCI for patients who are already familiar with gaze interaction, but in danger of losing their eye control. Thank you.